I've got another intake manifold job to do for my buddy Phil over at Mayham Motorsports. He's the one that I machined the last manifold for. And this is another manifold that's going to a different car that he's been working on. I believe he said it's off of a Mustang. I believe this goes to the 5.0 Mustang. And the problem is he can't get anything to seal up. And apparently this is an aftermarket intake that was on the car, and he can't get this stuff to seal right. The main culprit is this surface right here, which is where the thermostat goes in. I'll get you a better shot and show you, but I can put just my scale on there and see that this area right in here is way low. So, I mean, that's probably going to be 25-30 thousandths off right here. So this needs to be machined squared off. And I've been checking all the other surfaces. This surface here, I've got my, this is my good straight edge that has been reground. And I can put this across there and I can actually rock it slightly. So it's off a little bit, it's a little bit high in the middle. So this needs to be cut right there. And then he said he also had another issue with, I don't remember what side, but one of the cylinder heads had a very minor leak to it and he couldn't get it to seal up. So I checked these faces here that go against the cylinder head, and they're not perfect either. So we're going to plan on cutting all these faces there. We're going to cut both sides that match up to the heads and make sure that they're good and straight. And we're also going to machine the top and then this face right there for the thermostat. So the bottom of this thing was machined originally from the factory, so we've got a machine face right there as well as this. This should be nice and square, so we'll probably start with this face right here and flip it upside down, or not upside down, but just flip it on like that, some parallels. And what we can do is machine this face. We'll side mill that with an end mill, and then we'll go ahead and run our cutter across this face right there and get that cut. And then my plans from there is I'm going to take a piece of flat bar and we're just going to make a fixture plate that's going to bolt to this right there, and we'll use 6 of these holes, bolt a fixture plate down, and that way we can flip it over onto the fixture plate and be able to hold it. And we're going to go to the shaper, and then we'll use our shaper to be able to rotate the table around and get this squared up. We'll cut both of these sides on the shaper. That's my plan of attack. This is the piece that goes with it right there, and I've been doing some check-in with the straight edge on these faces. He just wanted me to check it. He didn't think that there was anything wrong with them, but I'll check it before we get through to make sure that these are good. But if these don't need to be cut, then we won't worry about that. He just wanted me to double check it why everything was apart. So let's go ahead. We'll start with the K&T mill and get our fixture plate going, and then we'll start getting all this milled in. This is the plate that we're going to use to make the fixture to hold this. This will also, be a sort of like a universal fixture for later jobs. We'll save it in case we ever need to use it again. So it's a piece of 1 inch by 5 inch flat bar. It's been rusted up outside, so I just went out there and wire brushed it good. But it was rusted all over it. So I'm going to clean it up. I'm going to use a shaper. We've got it cut 19 inches long. And we're just going to square it up, make it nice and clean on the edges. Another great use of the shaper is to cut rusty metal like this. And the plan is to machine it. I'll have a couple holes drilled in so that we can just use the center T-slot of the table on the shaper to just hold this plate down. But it'll also be drilled and counterbored for this hole pattern up there, 6 of the holes, so that I can just bolt it to the top just like that using our socket head bolts. And then this is what we'll clamp down onto the table. It'll be flipped upside down. So we'll give you some highlights along the way of getting this thing cut in and get it machined. We'll get both of the sides cleaned up first. Just make one pass across both of the sides, and then we'll do the top and bottom. That's just a 10 thousandths cut just to clean the surface up. Finish is looking good. I touched up the tool bit before I started. I reground it and then hung the corner, and it's leaving a nice shearing action on the metal. And I just hit that with my stone to deburr any fuzz on there. Ready to flip it over and cut the other side. This is the cutting fluid I'm using here, a Mystic Metal Mover. This was given to me by one of my viewers a few years ago, and I use it every now and then. I wanted to try it on the shaper and see how it does. It's got a little less smoking action than my sulfur-based oil. It seems to be doing good on there. Got our first top side getting cut in. Won't take very long and we'll have that sucker done. So I thought I would go ahead and touch on one of the issues I always get on why a shaper. So let's go ahead and talk about just this workpiece right here. This is a rusty piece of steel, and this shaper does a great job on cutting in rusty, pitty, dirty material using that high-speed tool that I can grind versus a carbide, a rotating cutter, or even a shell mill or an end mill or a fly cutter. I don't really like using fly cutters unless I really need to, but it does a good job on that kind of job right there. The other thing, we've got the vise right here is 16 inches long. So you got a lot bigger vise than our standard milling vise over on the milling machine table. That workpiece is 19 inches long. You see I'm just hanging it off a little bit on that side. So you got a lot of rigidity holding that piece. And just look at it, it's doing a great job. Once I clean that oil and rust off, it's gonna be a beautiful finish on there. So, like I said, you see how wide the vise is, so you got a lot more support holding the workpiece. Even if I'm using my 8-inch milling vise here, you got 8 inches jaw width and you've got a lot more material hanging off the end out there. And not to say that that wouldn't work over here, but you really want to support more of your workpiece if you can. So you could put some jacks under it or whatever to try to stabilize it. So if this vise was not set up on this machine, I probably will always go over to that shaper and use that machine if it's available, if that vise is set up. A lot of times it determines on which one's set up. If the shaper is ready to roll and I'm just ready to start cutting, I'm gonna go over there and do that. If the shaper is not set up and I gotta mount the vise on it, true the table up, but this vise is ready to go, then I'll probably come over here and do it here instead, just because I've got less setup to do. So that's one of the factors there as well, is which machine is ready to go. You know, you gotta install a face mill in there and get that set. And the other thing is this makes, when you use a big face mill over here, if you're gonna do some milling, it slings these chips everywhere. So you've got a big cleanup to do once you do a little bit of milling over there. Look at the cleanup I gotta do here. It just puts it right in this box here. Very little gets on the floor, on the machine. So a lot easier cleanup over here because you have better chip control of the chips coming off into the box. We're finished up cutting the fixture plate there on the shaper. It turned out real nice. We've got it deburred and clean. You can see it just does a good job. And this is that's a rough cut right there. So if we wanted to finish that, we can certainly make a lot nicer finish. But I like the way that feels. It's got the cut lines in it, and I rubbed the stone over it there to make sure that it's all smoothed off and good. So the plan is to drill it, counterbore it for 6 holes. You got the 2 in the center, and then we got the 2s on each end right there. These are 5/16. Verified it with a 5/16 bolt. I'll need to run down to my local hardware store and get me some socket head bolts, proper length, because I don't have any. All I've got is these guys. So we'll probably go ahead and set this in the mill. Go ahead and get these 2 first, since these are going to be in the middle. We'll go ahead and just center up in the mill, drill counterbore those 2, and then we'll get it bolted on there. I'm going to use my transfer punches. We'll put our little transfer screws here, bolt it down with this, that way it's kind of square, and then we'll tap it and that'll locate the placement of the other 4 holes there. I went ahead and got a head start on the fixture plate here. We went ahead and got 2 of the holes drilled in there, and that's going to be for these 2 center holes right here. And the reason for that is I wanted to just kind of try to, since these look like they're kind of symmetrical with the shape of the part, we want to go ahead and get this bolted down, and we're going to transfer the end bolt locations to the plate. And I just wanted to make sure it was kind of square in line with it there. So I'm going to end up using, what we're going to use are these Mayham transfer screws, and we'll put these in these 4 outer holes. We'll bolt the plate down. We'll bolt the plate down like that with our Mayham transfer screw points just barely sticking up out of the holes, and then we'll take our hammer, we'll take our soft blow and just tap each end to transfer the hole location, and then we'll go back to the mill and then drill and counterbore those 4. We're going to be using these 5/16 socket head screws right here to hold it down in place. This is the little set of transfer screws that we're going to use, made by Mayham. I've got a different set, different range of these. See, this is 5/16 18, so you just unscrew the cap there, and inside of it you'll have your transfer screws. So I'm going to take 4 of them out of the set right there. Take these off out of the way, and then put our cap back on. And then the end of the tool right there is the install tool. So you just take your, you can see we've got our point on the end of them. Go ahead and insert it into the install tool there in the case. It's a multi-purpose tool, and we'll go ahead and just get them screwed into the hole here. We'll get these 2, and then we'll set our height of the point. And usually what I do is I'll just take the scale there, lay it up against the face, and screw it in to where it just goes over the hex, but the point of the screw is sticking up. So it doesn't take a lot, it's just touching it right there. So that's it right there, just the point is sticking up. Alright, and we'll do the same thing over here. There we go, just the point of it. Alright, and we'll do that on the other end there as well. Okay, I think we got all 4 of them ready to go. We'll go ahead and take our fixture plate here and set it on there nice and easy, so we're not making a bunch of scratch and dents there where the transfer screws are. Get our bolts in there. Get one started, and then we'll start the other here. We got them both snug down, so it's, I can tell it's sitting up on the points. Yep, trying to pull it down. So we'll go ahead and give her a tap with our hammer now. I'm just going to look down here and see. I'm just going to look down here and see where it's at. We'll do it right there. All right, go to the other side and do the same thing. Alright, let's see how our transfer points look on it. I'll get my marker. Yep, we got four good locations there. I like to just take and highlight the areas that I'm going to be lining up on and put a circle on it just so that you can see it. And let's go ahead and just tell you what, since we put it like this, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put a mark here on the side, put a mark here on this corner, and I'll know that those two marks, that's where it lines up at, just to kind of time it there. Alright. Okay, we are ready to go back to the mill and do our drilling there. So I'll have to, since we did it this way, what I'll have to do is drill the holes, and then we'll have to flip it over, line up our hole with our drill, and then counterbore it for the socket head bolt. I'll get the punch marks lined up real quickly using my center right there, just visually, running the point down in there very softly, and then so we'll come back with my coaxial indicator and actually indicate the punch mark there. We got our Blake coax in there. This is what I'll use to very quickly just line up the 4 holes. I'm just going to show you one right here, and we'll get it done. And just go side to side and just make the movements that we need. That it's walking around, and this particular punch mark, for whatever reason, that tip shattered whenever I tapped on it. And so it doesn't have a really true point down in that one there. So we're really close enough to what we need to be. It doesn't have to be any closer than that. So we're just going to leave it right about there. But I'll show you another one so that you can get a little better idea of this, what's going on with this here. Start with a center drill and go ahead and drill the center point there so that we know our drill bit's going to track correctly. Here's the next hole. Maybe you can see this one a little bit better since it won't jump around like the first hole. Moving the y-axis on the mill now. Plenty good enough right there. Alright, we got all of our holes drilled, so I've got the piece flipped back over, and we're going to use our Blake here to line up on our holes. So thought I would go ahead and show you this again. And keep in mind, that's just a drilled hole, so it's not really smooth. So it'll jump around a little on that rough drilled hole there. Just moving both the X and Y axis here to get it lined up. We'll get it within 1 or 2 thousandths, and then we'll leave it alone. So that looks like it's pretty darn close, right about there. So we'll go ahead and just leave it there, and then we're going to use our counterboring tool. Let me find that. Here's our counterboring tool that we're going to use. It's already got the pilot ground into it. Chuck that up and I'm going to go 3/8 deep with these holes here. Take my counterbore tool and just very gently touch the surface there. I'm going to zero out my quill DRO here. Here's the quill. Just come in here and zero that out, and then we'll move it down 3/8 of an inch. I run these guys kind of slow. This is not the kind of tool that you want to replace a lot. It does a good job though. Just keep it well oiled. Just watching my quill. We're going to sneak up on the 375, and there it is. All right. And to finish it off, we'll just break that edge with this chamfer tool, make it look nice, and there we go. So We got 3 more to do. I'll get those other 3 done, and then we'll bring it back and we'll test fit it over on the manifold. All right, guys, we got it all drilled and counterbored. Only thing left to do really is to I got to drill my 2 holes for the studs to hold it down. I was going to do that after we get through this because that's real simple. So let's go ahead and test fit it. Got my red mark here, red mark over here, making sure there's no chips or dust on it. Just kind of eyeball it there, and we'll just with that plate right there, I can tell that that surface is not flat. I can make it rock a little bit, but we're going to deck that first before we bolt it on there. So I've actually got 4. I've got 4 screws the correct length here, and then I've got 2 that I'm going to have to cut them. They're a little bit long, but let's go ahead and check and make sure our hole pattern is going to work. Everything's going to line up. All right, so far so good. That one's going in. That one's going in. We got 2 more. Let's see how it does. Good. That one's screwing. And that one's screwing there. So these are the 2. I'll have to, yeah. So I got to cut a little bit off those. I'll just take a side cutter on the grinder and lop those off. And then that'll be ready to go. So what we're going to do is, since I've got it just kind of, sitting in place, I want to get a measurement on the plate here. I want to get a measurement here. This is where we're going to have a hole drilled, and then so our stud and our flange nut will bolt down right here. So it looks like we've got approximately, let's just say 3 inches right there. So I'll probably come in. I'll take a flange nut. Let me grab one. Probably go ahead and use my 5/8 hardware. So we're going to take this nice flange nut, one on each side, and just have it drilled so that we can put our stud and a flange nut on each end there. So let's just say 1 inch from the end looks pretty good. Looks like it's right about in the center of that flange nut there. Let me double check the other side. This one's a little bit shorter over here, so we got about 2 inches. So 1 inch should suffice there as well. We'll go about 1 inch to the center, and that'll give it some good coverage. So that's our next plan of attack. Go ahead and get these 2 holes drilled. This is the setup that we'll use here. You put our T-nut in the slot, shortest 5/8 stud I got right there, and then a flange nut to hold it in place. So it's going to be like that, or actually more like that right there. We'll drill the end holes 41/64, so that's clearance over a 5/8, and I'm already found the center, and I'm just going to use my hook scale here to just quickly scale it 1 inch from the end. I just hook the end, line up the point on the rule there, and just visually line it up on the 1 inch mark, just like that. Running 210 on the spindle here for the 41/64. And don't forget to break the edges, get rid of the burr. Like that. All right, and of course I'll flip over the other side, deburr it. So 1 more hole to drill and we'll be done with our fixture plate.